Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call, particularly those of you that are calling in for the first time and those that will be listening to the replay over the next 24 to 48 hours. Our regular approach to these calls is to spend a few minutes talking about the reinstitution and revaluation of the Iraqi dinar, along with some of these other currencies, a few minutes talking about the program we put in place to assist you, and then we go to a brief Q&A. We're going to do things a little differently today. I took a 5-day vacation, and unfortunately I neglected to mention that on my last call. It was my intention to do so, but I forgot. I tend to be a creature of habit. And when I returned from the vacation, I had over 100 contacts, which included individuals applying for trusts and existing clients that had service questions. And so I'm going to be spending the rest of the week trying to catch up with those calls. But I am going to spend the time today talking about the situation in Iraq, and in my view, the news is pretty good news for those of us that have been holding the dinar and some of these other currencies. I'm going to strongly suggest that those calling in for the first time, and I will be giving you the call information, go back and listen to our call of July 22nd. That's for a couple of reasons. First, that call dovetails very closely with the information I'm going to provide today. And second, I will not be discussing the program that we've put in place to assist you, but you will find all of that information again on the call from July 22nd. And before we get off of this call, I will be giving you all of the contact information. So let's go ahead and talk about what's going on in Iraq. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves, we're sharing with you information that we think is most relevant. Of course, the most relevant piece of information would be the window for the potential reinstitution of the dinar. We still are in this window of September to January. So let's talk about what's going on in Iraq. First, let's talk a little bit about what's going on with the Parliament. The Parliament has begun preliminary discussions with regard to the 2021 budget. One of the issues that's being discussed is the diversification of revenue. This is because they really got burned in the 2020 budget because the majority of the revenue, the vast majority of the revenue came from the sale of petroleum. And they were looking at the sale of petroleum at above $60 a barrel at the time. Of course, the barrel of oil dropped to half that in the last 9 months. So that is what's created the budget deficit. So what they're looking to do in 2020 is to diversify, and they're looking at revenues generated from agriculture, from technology, and even from tourism. The Finance Committee has been spearheading their attempt to amend the investment law in order to accommodate this economic diversification and the general privatization of their economy. Lastly, the Finance Committee is the group that's slated to prepare the education for the Iraqi citizens prior to the reinstitution of the currency and the deletion of the zeros. Now, if you're on the ground as a citizen, what this basically means is the calculation is that a $25,000 note, as an example, for an Iraqi citizen will become a 25 dinar note. Now, that 25 dinar note will be worth approximately $20.75 in USD. The importance there is that as an Iraqi citizen, $20.75 in USD can be converted to a 25 dinar note, which is a slight premium, giving them a little bit more purchasing power. This is their incentive to drop the dollar and utilize their own currency. And they're going to need to utilize their own currency on a day-to-day basis in order for the IMF to then reinstate their currency, or revalue their currency globally. In addition, the Al-Kazemi government has issued a statement regarding Iraq's new approach to international relations. First, that the sovereignty of Iraq must be respected. Second, that the national interests of Iraq must always be first and foremost in the minds of their government. In other words, Iraq first, if that sounds familiar. Second, that all deals must be mutually beneficial to both parties. And lastly, they're not going to be doing deals with any countries that are interfering in their international affairs. So once again, they're putting Iran on notice. But why would it be necessary for the Al-Kazemi government to even make this public statement unless they're anticipating an uptick in relations and contracts with other countries, which of course cannot be accomplished until their currency revalues? So that's basically where we are. The other issue I would mention is that the dinar needs to revalue for a number of reasons. The CBI reserves are basically utilized. So there is an inability to pay the governmental expenses and to pay the salaries of government employees and retirees. They're unable to borrow substantially much more money. Again, their reserves with the CBI are substantially less. So the price of a barrel of oil has not yet risen to the point where they can even cover their existing 2020 budget deficit. So rationally speaking, the reinstitution of their currency looks like the only way they're going to be able to make ends meet. This is another reason why we have the reval as early as September of this year. Now, I want to get into one other general area before we check out this afternoon, and that has to do with the larger global picture and how Iraq fits into that. Right now, the U.S. dollar is the largest reserve currency globally. It's the largest reserve currency utilized by the IMF for the SDRs. It's the largest reserve currency held by the other central banks globally. In addition, with the COVID-19 pandemic, there's been a flight to the U.S. dollar. So the United States is in an advantageous position right now financially. What has the Trump administration done? It's subordinated the Federal Reserve to the Treasury Department, and it's basically utilizing those funds to provide benefits from the bottom-up approach in the United States. In addition, these funds are being borrowed from the Federal Reserve basically at 0%. So there is no accrual in the Federal Reserve for the money that's being expended for the virus. And now that the Federal Reserve is no longer a private corporation, but it's part of the Treasury Department, government can simply forgive those loans. Why am I saying this? What I'm saying is we're looking at the beginning of the end of the global central bank system. And we're moving to sound money, to Basel III compliant commodity-backed currencies. So this would push a currency like Iraq toward revaluation. Now, why, in my view, is the reinstitution and revaluation of the Iraqi dinar inevitable? Well, let's just step back and take a look at the country of Iraq. It can be argued that per square mile, Iraq is the richest country in the world. It's top 5 in the world in known oil reserves. In addition, Iraq has the sweetest crude oil, meaning it has the lowest sulfur content. Why is that important? It's important because it means it's much less expensive to refine the petroleum. Why is refining so important? basically because only about 1/3 of refined petroleum is used in the combustion engine. Fully 2/3 of it is used in the production of glass, rubber, plastics, textiles, pharmaceuticals, electronics, and most importantly, nanotechnologies. What's the most important nanotechnology? Computers and smartphones. There's not enough wind and solar in the universe to produce one smartphone. You need and must have these fossil fuels. You know, I kind of laugh when I watch the protests going on in the United States, and you see these protesters, Antifa and Black Lives Matter and some of these other groups that are basically fronts for the Marxist movement protesting capitalism. And if you look, they're all holding up their smartphones and taking pictures of these protests. Of course, the only reason they possess a smartphone is because the capitalist system is able to produce goods and services in sufficient quantities to make them affordable to the average individual. So it's counterproductive what they're doing. But getting back to Iraq, not only do they have the one of the largest known oil reserves and the sweetest crude, but they also have extremely rich mining resources. Remember, they are the home of the Tigris-Euphrates River Delta. All of those natural resources flow down from the Caucasus Range, of course, which is in Iran, which I'm sure bothers Iran. So all of the precious and industrial metals flow down to the Tigris-Euphrates Delta, making it easily mined. Of course, that delta is also referred to as the Fertile Crescent because what else flows down are all of the natural minerals that are good for agricultural products, which the Iraqis have finally realized they can produce in mass quantities. Then we have the history of Iraq. History, of course, is the home of Babylon, the early Samaritans, which were Sumerians, rather, which is the first or one of the first written civilizations. The first known great lawgiver was, of course, Sumerian Hammurabi. Geopolitically, Iraq is the gateway to the east, which is why China has its eye on Iraq and is trying to nose itself into Iraq. They want to establish their very ambitious Silk Road Initiative, which, of course, the gateway again would, of course, be Iraq. Iraq is also located between the two great enemies in the Middle East, the Saudis or Sunnis and the Iranians or the Shia. Iraq is also the northern neighbor of Kuwait, and Kuwait provides the warm water port that Iraq needs for the global export of its oil. But lastly, and it always comes down to this, is money. The United States and the West since 2003 have spent over $4 trillion to help resurrect Iraq, and they want their money back. And when the liberation agreement was signed between the United States and Iraq, one of the things, or the subsidiaries of that agreement, was Executive Order 13303, which allowed the United States citizen personally to participate in the repayment of the liberation of Iraq, which we possess in the form of these currencies. So for all of these reasons, as far as I'm concerned, it's not a matter of if, but when the dinar revalues. And as holders of the dinar, we stand to reap the reward. And as I backtrack, it looks as though, based on the information I have, that a very viable window is between September of this year, which is a mere 6 weeks away, January 2020, which is a mere 4 months away. So somewhere in that window, we're going to be in the bank exchanging these currencies. Now, Trusts Unlimited has put a program in place to assist you. It's very important that you understand what you need to do both pre- and post-RV to make sure that you maximize your returns both pre- and post-RV. We're not going to be getting into that on this call, but I did want to share this information with you because I do think it's good information. Again, I suggest that newer callers go to our call of 722 a week ago because, again, that information dovetails with what I've provided today. And I am going to give you our contact information because I certainly hope that those of you listening to this call and the call of last week will contact us, if you have not already done so, to get our initial no-obligation package. You can go to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. That's trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com. That's trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. If you'd like to listen to that July 22nd recall, you can either go to YouTube and then go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can go to IQD calls and then go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can simply dial this number. With the exception of the last number, rather than dialing a 4, you'll dial a 3, and then use the same access code, which is 739-394-pound. If you'd like to be included on our email list, you can go to our website, review the information there. There's a lot of information about us, about trusts, about the revaluation and the coins themselves, the currencies and the coinage. You can go to the bottom of that website, enter your name and email address where indicated. You should be on our email list within 24 hours. Bear in mind that we only send emails out periodically pre-RV, but after the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar, these calls will stop, and all of our calls will be based on assisting our clients with the management and funding of their trusts, and then the protocol for doing their exchange after the revaluation. And those emails will also be going out probably on a weekly basis after that reinstitution. So again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. I once again refer our newer callers to the call of September 22nd. We will be back next Wednesday. If something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call if possible. But failing that, we will be back for a normal and routine conference call next Wednesday, noon Eastern and 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen in, and have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.